Hey guys, welcome back to 59 Gaming. Gotcha Talks here. Since you enjoyed the interviews, we want to bring you a special video for Halloween, getting to know the crew's favorite horror movies, games, and scares. Let's start with our first question I have for each of the crew members. What is your favorite horror game?
For me, that's going to have to be at this point in my life, looking back on everything that I've played, the Alien Isolation video game. The Alien franchise is probably my favorite classic sci-fi horror franchise. I always gravitate towards sci-fi horror with my horror preferences. I am a big horror fan. I love scary movies, even though I don't really get scared at all. And all of the ones involving science fiction and fantasy and space with aliens, different stuff like that, are generally my favorite.
My favorite horror video game is the remake of the first Resident Evil, the remake. I actually played the game after I played 5, 6, and most of all 4, and wanted to find out more about the classic Resident Evil games. The setting, the soundtrack, and the way you play the game really fascinated me. The game is written horror all over it. I love every aspect of the first Resident Evil remake. In my opinion, a perfect game.
I hate horror. I am not a horror fan. I am a big scaredy cat, like absolutely huge. Not gonna lie, but I played a couple horror games and then put them down. And the one that scared me the most is Dead Space, the first Dead Space from way back when, like late 2000s. Yeah, so yeah, that scared the crap out of me. Holy God, yeah. So I don't have a favorite game, but the one that I know that I like after 40 minutes, I put it down and that was it. Just walked away. That's Dead Space.
I would say no doubt about it, the best all-time horror game and still probably my favorite is PT. Dude, PT was so scary, was great to play. One of these games that you kind of dread playing a little bit as well, and yeah, this game is still one of the best. And if you consider Last of Us a horror game, that's a masterpiece, of course. But yeah, I'm gonna go with more of the scarier stuff here, and yeah, PT takes the cake as my favorite horror game of all time.
Now, me personally, I am not a big horror game person. I haven't really played too many of like the mainstream horror games. I just haven't. It's just hasn't been something I've gotten around to doing. But I think if you really want to, pick my brain and ask me what my favorite horror game is, I think you can sort of classify Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask as sort of like a pseudo horror game, just because the overall feel of the game is very dark. The tone is very dark as well. There's a lot of unsettling scenes that go on in that game. So I think as a kid playing that game, there definitely was a horror element to that game. So that would probably be my choice there.
All right, very cool. How about your favorite horror movie?
I'm going to have to go out on a limb here and say the second Alien movie, Aliens, is my all-time favorite horror movie, with the first one not far behind. Kind of covered most of that in the first question.
My favorite horror movie of all time is an all-time classic. It's The Silence of the Lambs, and it's all because of the antagonist Dr. Hannibal Lecter.
Now, the one that left the biggest impression on me, again, I'm not a fan of horror, but I did like it, and was in the late 90s. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, my brother, who is like 10, 11 years older than me, took me to see this, and he was like, oh, I want to watch it, but I was like, I don't know, 9, 10 years old. This scared the crap out of me. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not afraid to admit this, but I had to sleep with my mom a couple times when I was like, because like everything scared me like crazy. The hook guy, all that stuff. Jeez, yeah. I don't know. Now, of course, as an adult, not a big deal. But when I was 9 or 10, that's the one I remember.
Let's go ahead and move into the favorite horror movies. So what's my favorite horror movies? And I put movies because I can't choose one. So I'm going to give you 3 like kind of old school type movies that if you haven't seen, man, it's yeah, you're missing out. So first one is OG Hellraiser. This is an old movie, and but still is one of the most terrifying and really amazing series. They still have continued the series on and on and on. And Pinhead is still one of the scariest villains out there. You get your Freddy Kruegers, your Jason Voorhees, things of that nature. But Pinhead, he's up there. My second one that I'm gonna talk about here is, I would say, it's a horror / comedy. I think it's a classic as well. So these are like 3 classic movies that are on my favorites list, and that's Army of Darkness. This is part of the Evil Dead series, but Army of Darkness is the best one out of all of them. And once again, if you haven't checked out this movie, it's a very old movie. It's still very funny, and there's some nice scary parts in there as well. So finally, the other one that would be more just dramatic scary is 28 Days Later. This is a fantastic horror movie, and still one of my favorites. But if I were to talk about like newer movies, there's 2 that stands out, and that would be It and A Quiet Place. These 2 are pretty much masterpieces for this generation or this decade here. So I would say one of those 2. But if I were to choose out of all 5 of these, I would go Army of Darkness. I just adore that movie. So
that's a tough choice. I think I would have to pick two movies. I don't know if I could narrow it down to one because they're very different. The first one would probably be Jaws. Obviously it came out in the 70s about a giant great white shark that is terrorizing an island, and they have to get a crew together to go out and hunt the shark and put an end to the destruction that's going on the island. And the reason why I like that movie so much is because back when that movie came out in the 70s, it actually had a direct impact on people's will to go into the ocean and go to the beach and go out and stuff like that. Because unlike a lot of other movies, which we'll get to my second choice in a second, but that was something that was feasibly possible, right? There could be a shark attack on the beach. And the fear that movie instilled in people, like, it was insane. And then my second pick for favorite horror movie would probably be The Shining, which is funny because both of the movies that I chose were both film adaptations of novels. The first one was Jaws was a novel by Peter Benchley, and The Shining was a novel by Stephen King. And The Shining just also had a very eerie feeling the entire time. There weren't really that many scary, quote unquote, parts of that movie, but there were a few. The reason why I like that movie so much, and the reason why I think it's one of the best horror movies ever, is because there were just so many scenes that were just unsettling, and not because of like the things that were on the screen. It was just the music, the environment, everything was just eerie about it. And that's really what gave me probably the most chill going down my spine feeling that I've had watching a movie in a long time.
Yep, those are all great. Last question I have for each of you is, what is your favorite horror scene?
I have to say that, it's going to be a series of scenes, but jumping back to the original Predator movie from back in the day, where the Predator is stalking Arnold's team through the jungle, each individual sequence where one of the team members ends up squaring up to or getting killed by the Predator, leading up to that ultimate battle versus Arnold where he 1v1s the Predator himself. That's probably my favorite collection of scenes from, I guess you could say, like a horror movie, because at that time when I was young, it was a pretty scary movie, and it kind of halfway through the movie transfers from an action movie into much more of like a sci-fi horror thriller.
The introduction of Dr. Lecter was done perfectly. When Clarice Starling is going through the cell block at the very beginning of the movie, she encounters several patients before Lecter. The first one looks very depressed, the second one seems to be crazy, and the third one seems to have lost his mind. Now, what do you expect from Dr. Lecter? When the character gets introduced, Lecter is very polite, someone with high intellect, and that pretty much tells the audience that he is extremely dangerous. The way he toys with Clarice and so on during the movie, it's really fascinating. I love his character in the movies and the series.
Again, I'm going to reference I Know What You Did Last Summer. So my favorite horror scene was when Ryan Phillippe was on the balcony, like cheering on his girlfriend. And of course, this is like very classic horror tropes, but it's the whole like, look behind you. he's right there. And I think Sarah Michelle Gellar was like actually trying to act like it's like a pageant or something, and she's trying to act it out, like act something very believable, and she's literally acting out that, oh my god, the dead guy's behind you, the murderer's behind you, and of course he is behind him and kills him and all that. Like, that's my favorite scene because it's the classic horror trope. But I was 10 or however old I was like, kid. It like impacted me. I was like, oh my god, that's so nuts. So yeah, that's my favorite horror scene.
Favorite horror scene. Now, the favorite horror scene actually doesn't come from any of my favorite movies, because I don't know if it would be considered a horror movie. So I don't know if this would be considered a horror scene, but my favorite scene in a horror, this is a horror science fiction movie. So horror fantasy based off of a comic book, and that's Constantine. And the best scene is when Lucifer arrives to basically take Constantine's soul, and this scene is just amazing. Played by the fantastic Peter. Oh man, I'm forgetting his last name. An amazing actor. Anyway, if you haven't checked out this movie, it's kind of an older movie as well. But this scene is just amazing when the glass breaks and shatters and he walks through it.
My favorite horror scene would probably have to go back to Jaws, and it's when Chief Brody is chumming on the boat, and they're trying to attract the shark over to get him, to hunt him down. And the shark just comes up, and it doesn't even come out of the water. It literally, like, the word I would use would be erupts out of the water. And, in like the chum pile that they're shoveling out into the ocean, that just like erupts out of the water. It's like a massive head appears. And that's the famous scene when Chief Brody backs up into the cabin, and Quint is there, and he's like, we're going to need a bigger boat. So, yeah, that's what I would say my favorite horror scene is.
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing all of your favorite horror movies and games. And to you, our audience, we hope you enjoyed. Let us know what are some of your favorite horror games and movies in the comments below. We love hearing from you guys. And with that, me and everyone else from 59 Gaming wish you all a very safe and fun-filled Halloween. Take care, you guys.